If you guys haven't seen the new Fallout show on Amazon, do yourself a favor and go check it out right now. It's an amazing show that both people who play the video games and people who aren't very familiar with the games will be able to come in and enjoy. Video games that they've made into movies and TV shows haven't always panned out, but this is definitely one of those cases where it has been really, really good. It does the lore very well, and I don't think there's a single thing I've noticed that's really wrong with it, other than like the power armor and how like the face mask can come off of it, which I don't really think is the biggest deal in the world. I do think that they could have made it so that they just take off the helmet, but it's a small change that I don't think is a very big deal. I do think that they also made it so that like, oh, the ghouls will become feral if they don't put in it's like some sort of weird like Radaway like thing. If they don't consume that, they're gonna turn feral. That wasn't in the games. I don't really think it's the biggest deal in the world that they included that either. But other than that, the lore has been done very well, and with video game like movies and TV shows, that's not always the case. So that's something I'm really glad to see here. The show's set around the area of California, so people who've played Fallout New Vegas and some of the earlier Fallout games are also really going to enjoy this. The show has three main protagonists. The first one is a vault dweller named Lucy, who, to be honest with you, she's a total square, and it's almost to the point where it's not really believable, as if you have seen the show called Brooklyn Nine-Nine, she is pretty much exactly like the character Amy, and it's just kind of hard to watch sometimes how, like, I don't know, it's just, she doesn't feel like a real person sometimes. That's all I can really say. It's like, do everything by the book, like, they can't break a single minor rule. It's just, it's really cringy in my opinion, and it's something I can get, like, past, but it's a little off-putting. The character Maximus, he is from the Brotherhood of Steel, and I mean, he's has an interesting backstory, and he's mostly likable. He's not, an idiot like Lucy, who is just completely like oblivious to the wasteland. And some of it makes sense because she was like, living in a vault her entire life, and she's been unaware of all the craziness that's been going on in the real world. So you can't really fault her to some of that stuff. But Maximus is kind of there to like come in and be like, no, you gotta stop being so sheltered, and you gotta be a lot more cautious of this world. And what I don't like about him though is he just makes a lot of like dumb decisions. And there's not necessarily anything completely wrong with dumb decisions, since people make mistakes. It's just there's a couple of mistakes that he makes I think are just completely boneheaded. Like he like lies to the Brotherhood of Steel about a certain thing where it's like, if you just tell them what happened, aside from like maybe like one small detail that you could just kind of like fabricate, then it's like it would have been completely fine. And I'm not saying that necessarily anything goes wrong with the Brotherhood. It's just more like he tells them a lie, and it's just kind of like you really didn't have to lie about it. Another thing with him is that he like to another character, who basically establishes himself as like safe and friendly and everything like that. He still lies about his name, which I would get it if it's like random people. And I guess she is still sort of random, but she still established herself as someone she can trust, as this character pretty much saved him. So him lying about his name, especially when like it's gonna be found out after certain events. Like basically certain events happen to where it's a pretty good chance that his true name is gonna get discovered. So it's like, why are you lying? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Last but not least, though, we have the ghoul named Cooper, who is a really interesting character. He's kind of this, like, morally ambiguous, honestly, maybe even slightly kind of a bad person, but he's still, like, he has good down in him, and he's not necessarily outright going out and just, like, murdering people for no reason, like, left and right. It's more like, if people try to kill him, he has no issue just killing them back, And I guess he does do some things that aren't exactly good, but basically the point is he's just kind of this morally ambiguous character who's also just kind of a badass that you can appreciate. He's also really funny. He comes in with all these like quippy little lines, kind of reminds me of how like Spider-Man's supposed to be, and he's just all around a really fun character. You also get a lot of background info from before the war with him as well, which kind of goes to show some more stuff with like Vault-Tec and all the evilness that they were doing before the war, which was also really interesting. As I believe a lot of that stuff wasn't really talked about like in the games. As you know, Vault-Tec is kind of evil, and that they aren't good people. But the show kind of like goes even more in depth of like all the stuff that they were planning and the reasons why, and I thought all that stuff was really interesting. Also, I will say the episodes are really well paced. Some of the episodes are a little bit longer, like a little bit over an hour. Although there's like, like 5 to 7 minutes of credits at the end of each episode, so it's really not as long of an episode as they may seem. But I think they're really well paced, as I almost never found myself bored watching this show. Which sometimes with like shows that are an hour long, like there's times where you're gonna get a little bit bored. But this, I didn't really have any issues with that. I think it's also a really beautiful show. They did the power armor really well. I love how they gave it this like intimidating factor that like, you're just this regular person standing next to this dude in a giant power armor suit. You're gonna be scared. And I also think it's funny and also interesting how they also made that people who are in the power armor suits, they're arrogant. They're douchebags, and wearing the suit, it gets to their heads, and I do kind of like that because I think realistically a lot of people who are in those power armor suits are going to let it get to their heads. Now, I will say the show is really, really gory, which, I mean, for me, it's a little bit more gory than I would like. I'm not really one of those people that's like obsessed with everything, like just guts spilling out, heads exploding, and for other people, I know a lot of other people really want to see more gory shows and stuff, and there really aren't a ton of shows and movies that like go all out with the gore. But this is one of those shows that it kind of goes pretty all out with the gore. And honestly, I can't blame people for wanting more gore in shows. As like I said, there aren't that many shows or movies that like show gore to the extent that this show does. I will say that there's some other issues that I haven't talked about yet as well, which there's a few dialogue lines here and there that are just really hard to watch. For example, one of the female characters just kind of like is randomly just like, want to have sex? And then the character that she's talking to responds with, like with my cock? And it's just really hard to watch. I felt like secondhand embarrassment watching that scene, even though it wasn't even real. I felt so uncomfortable watching that. And it does make me kind of worried that like if they included that, like, and that went past so many people, they were like, yeah, let's include that in the show. It does make me a little bit worried that there might be some future decisions that like are really questionable that they like put into the show. Another issue I have is that there's a point like pretty early on in the show where Lucy's character gets some really strong plot armor. Basically, there's someone that's like going and shooting up like a bunch of people and just like pretty much left and right these guys like come in trying to like shoot him, and he's just like bang, 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 and no one's able to do anything against them. And then Lucy just comes in and she's like, we gotta stop being violent. Can't we all just be friends? Can't we all just get along? And he points his gun at her, and he's about to shoot her, and then she just gets saved by some crazy plot armor. It's not the end of the world. I don't see it as like the biggest deal, but I do think it is a bit of an issue. Because it's like we're in this world where everyone is super fucking vulnerable. Because we're in this world where everyone is super vulnerable. People are dying left and right. People probably aren't living to be like 20 years old. And Lucy just kind of comes in and, yeah, she's going to be very, like, oblivious to the state of the world. But, like, she's just running right into the face of danger and she just gets saved. And it's a little bit of an issue I have. There's another thing that happens early on is that, like, one of the characters gets stabbed, and that character just pulls out the knife like right afterwards, and it's like, why are you doing that? Like, it's a common like theme in movies where the characters do that, and it's like, why? Like, you're literally making things worse by pulling out the knife. And by now it's like, people should know you are not supposed to pull out a knife if you get stabbed. And it's something that happens like twice as well. Like, there's another character who gets like shot with an arrow and he just pulls the arrow out, and it's like, why? But overall, it's a fantastic show. If you haven't seen it already, go ahead and watch it. I'm assuming that most people who are here watching this probably have already seen it. I am not a very well-known person on YouTube, like, by any means, so people who are watching this are probably just more interested in, like, commentary or analysis or opinions on the show, so I'm gonna get into that in a second. I just wanted to give a quick, like, spoiler-free review that people who hadn't seen the show yet can watch without having to worry about spoilers. I would say overall, though, I would give the show an 8.5 out of 10. An amazing show. I would highly recommend it. As I've said like a million times already, I would highly recommend the show, and I think anyone would enjoy the show unless you're not into post-apocalyptic stuff or maybe the goriness. Otherwise, I think anyone is gonna be able to enjoy the show. There's just so much that translated well from the game and into the show, and I'm just really excited for season 2 of the show, which hopefully will come out next year. I mean, that might be a little optimistic, but hopefully next year, Fallout Season 2 will come out. But that's the end of the spoiler-free review, so if you don't want to see any spoilers, I would go ahead and click off now. Although before you click off, go ahead and leave me a like if you haven't already, and subscribe as well, please. So there's some really interesting information that comes out in the last episode, which is in a meeting with Vault-Tec and a bunch of other companies where they're basically collaborating to end the world because they want to basically put themselves in stasis chambers and emerge like over the next like 100 years or so, and basically just take over the world without any other people to compete with. And I don't think any of this was talked about in the games, so I thought this was really cool to see more backstory on Vault-Tec and what caused the whole apocalypse. That was really interesting to see how like Cooper's wife was like, she seemed like she was like, you know, she was doing her best, and that she was there in this crappy company doing her best, trying to steer them on the right direction, doing her best to make sure that all the evilness that they are doesn't like, you know, go unchecked. But as it turns out, she is really one of the people that's actually leading the charge of their shittiness. And I think it'll be really interesting to see how this pans out with the next season, for how Cooper's going to feel about all of this, as he didn't seem to be very happy that his wife was planning to end the world so that she would have more power over people. But he also did say that, like, his reason for surviving for so long and not just allowing himself to die was that he wants to see his family, which, I mean, his wife literally, like, caused the end of the world on purpose, so I don't see why he would want to see her, but he does have a daughter, so I do get that. I also thought it was really interesting that the experiment with Vault 31, 32, and 33 was that, well, really, it wasn't an experiment. It was just that all those vaults were being ran by the people who were originally the higher-ups in that Vault-Tec company, along with some of those other companies. And it wasn't an experiment. They were just trying to lead these people and eventually come to the surface and control everyone. I thought it was a really interesting revelation that Lucy's dad was a Vault-Tec higher-up. Especially with how this whole series was basically her trying to, like, do everything so that she could to rescue him. And it turns out, wow, this guy's a major asshole. Like, by the end of it, it goes from her wanting to save her dad to her, like, seriously considering just leaving him there to, like, die. And honestly, I can't blame her. I would have had those exact same thoughts. I'm not entirely sure as to, like, what that lady's plan was, though, to, like, put that little energy thing in to, like, repower the city. Especially with the Brotherhood, like, coming in, like, right after her, since they kind of just got wiped out by the Brotherhood, and it's like, okay, well, you powered the city, but it seems like these people, the Brotherhood, the people that are obsessed with just taking everyone's technology for themselves, they're gonna take it, and it's gonna, like, they're gonna power up the city for, like, 5 minutes, and then the Brotherhood of Steel is gonna come in and be like, yeah, nah, that's ours now. So, I mean, it almost feels like she died for no reason. Also, speaking of that, like, in that confrontation between Lucy and her dad, she just kind of disappears, and then reemerges, like, 10 minutes later, all of a sudden just mortally wounded, and it's just, like, I don't know, it just felt a little weird to me. Which is another criticism I think I forgot to mention in the original review. Although I guess it is kind of a spoiler anyway, so it belongs here, I guess. Oh, I do think I also forgot to mention that the main character, Lucy, has some crazy plot armor. Like, Cooper was going around just shooting people left and right, murdering them, blowing up their heads and shit. And then Lucy just waltz right in, like, stop killing people. We gotta be nice. We gotta stop this. And like Cooper was about to just blow her brains when all of a sudden, not Titus. I was about to say Titus, but Maximus just comes in flying in with the power armor to save the day and distract him. Like, if that was literally anyone else, they would have done their little, like, we gotta be nice and help people speech, and she would have immediately just gotten her head blown off. Like, anyone else. It's not the, like, end of the world, but I do think it is a little bit of a flaw. One other issue I had was, again, like, the decision making of the character I was talking about in the earlier was Maximus. And it was that he was, like, lying about his name to Lucy for some reason, and it's like, she just saved you, dude. Why are you even bothering, like, lying to her? Especially with the other dude, like, running away, and he's gonna snitch on you and say that, yeah, it's Maximus hiding in the power armor, so it's like, what is the point of lying to her about your name? Also about lying to the Brotherhood about, like, just pretending to be Titus. It's like, dude, just say he was killed by the bear and that you, like, went to his power armor to kill it. Like, it's that fucking simple. Like, I mean, yeah, that itself would have been a lie, but it would make a lot more sense than just impersonating Titus. So it's like, the second you come out of the power armor, it's going to be obvious that it's you. And you also set yourself up to, like, have to lead them to the little artifact that they want. Also, the squire that ran away from Maximus, it's like, why didn't you try to convince him more to, like, not snitch on you and to, like, help you? Like, yeah, you did a little bit of convincing, but then you went right to, like, trying to kill him. And it's like, you could have done a little bit more convincing there, buddy. Now, some other interesting things I saw was that Mr. House was included in that meeting with Vault-Tec about basically ending the world. So I'm interested to see if we're going to see more of Mr. House in Season 2, with more of these, like, pre-war backstory things. I honestly hope we do, as I thought he was a really interesting character in Fallout New Vegas. Another thing was that there was also the Red Rocket gas station in this game, so I thought that was a cool little detail. As well as, like, Cooper finding dog meat, which was the not golden retriever, German Shepherd, that Squire just basically trapped in that little, whatever, the ice tank thing. So I thought that was cool that, you know, that's where dog meat was found in Fallout 4, and then that's what happens in this show as well. Another interesting thing, though, is that there weren't any Deathclaws shown, as well as super mutants or synths. Although they did, like, basically imply that they're gonna bring the Deathclaws in, like, probably the next season. As at the end, they show, like, a Deathclaw skull. And I'm gonna be really excited to see some, like, Deathclaw action, because those things are vicious. And even when you're wearing power armor, those things can tear you apart, so I want to see some, like, Brotherhood of Steel versus, like, Deathclaws just getting, like, torn apart. But yeah, if you like this review, please be sure to leave me a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I do hope to post more stuff like this in the future. It's not really something I normally do, but I do have an interest in posting more just reviews of, like, shows and games and stuff like that in the future. I know my setup isn't, you know, anything crazy here. I kind of got the budget set up, but I hope to improve it more in the future. Let me know in the comments how you felt about the show as well. Let me know if you agreed with me, disagreed with me, if there's something I missed, or something you're excited for. Just let me know. Also, this is, like, one of my first times ever, like, doing a review like this, and I know my background here isn't anything special. I want to improve that in the future, but with the video itself, please let me know down below if there's anything I could have improved, what you would like to see, anything like that.